Okay, we've saved the best till last. It's our final session at Digital Innovators Summit 2016. And we're going to look at the power of live video, and particularly mobile video, Periscope, Vine. You all know the buzzwords that we've been discussing and talking about at the conference. And here to discuss how this might work in that live environment, it's the head of media partnerships, EMEA for Twitter, Rowan Barnett. Rowan.
Thank you very much. You said that very charmingly, saving the best to last. Thank you very much that you're still here. But it was a great presentation from Julian, so thanks for having me. I will give you a little look into Twitter and news and how we see it and how we see it developing. But before I do that, I want to just have a quick kind of look back of how Twitter and news and the platform has developed over the last few years. So yesterday was our 10th birthday, as no doubt probably everyone in this room discovered. And for me, to be honest, it was really one of the best days that I've had on Twitter. I mean, it's incredible how much passion there is for our platform. And it was, a day thanking the users, reflecting on what has happened. In comparison, when I opened up the app this morning, it's that's Twitter as well. And to be honest, I'm sure all our thoughts go out to the victims in Brussels. So Twitter, looking at the past and then reflecting how that is influencing the way we think about news right now and the way we think about Twitter in the future and how we want to work with publishers in that journey. Yes, I think we've come a long way, and this statement from Jack Dorsey in 2007, to a big degree, Twitter has had a massive impact in many, many ways on many different industries and on the world as a whole. Now, everyone knows these pictures, but I think it's worth just thinking, this for us was obviously one of the milestones in our history where a user discovered the hashtag or came up with the idea and we just put it into the platform. Other milestones in terms of news was really this, where we realized for the first time in 2009 what this platform had become. It had given everyone a voice and it had enabled anyone to share the news, and that was really starting there, I think, where the whole it started to change journalism. The fact that anyone can distribute the news. This was also another watershed moment in 2011. Twitter is this communication platform. Twitter is this information network connecting people, being able to transcend barriers. That was also a key moment in our history. And unfortunately, we've seen over the years since this moment, the Boston bombings, this has happened now time and time again. It's a challenge. It's what news happens on the platform. If something happens in the world, it happens on Twitter first. And it's obviously, for journalists, it's an incredible news wire. It's the place to go when there's breaking news. But equally, it's a challenge. We know the challenges from Boston about how to gather news, how to fact check, and this, that's really been the job of the newsrooms over the last few years to figure that out. And of course, it's none more relevant than, unfortunately, today. This being one of the first videos on Twitter from the attack, and of course the ensuing tweets after that. So when we look back over these 10 years, it is quite fascinating to see just how many of these breaking news moments have happened on Twitter, but also the social movements that have then generated from that. If you think back through, Black Lives Matter and He for She and I'll Ride With You, and in Germany, Ausnahmslos and Aufschrei, etc., etc. That's really the power of the conversations that can travel across the globe within an instant. And I want to talk a little bit about that before I go on into the journalist news cycle. And really, this is a pattern that we see across any of those hashtags, any of those global movements, those conversations that are happening. This happens to be Je suis Charlie, the conversation that happened over a 24-hour period with that hashtag. But it's really, it's what we see across every single breaking news scenario. The interesting thing, I think, is the velocity with which tweets can travel across borders and around the world. And I just wanted to reflect on this one example, again, as an example which could be sit for many of the breaking news situations. Je suis Charlie, this was the first tweet. It went out at 12:52. Now, 5 minutes later was the first tweet with a hashtag, because you'll notice that actually he didn't put a hashtag in there. He was an art director and said he couldn't express himself in words, and therefore he just did a graphic. So 5 minutes later went out the first tweet with a hashtag. And this is interesting for a couple of reasons. This is actually my aunt. She lives in Paris. And interesting for two reasons. One, she used her Wi-Fi code when she set up her account, quite clearly. The reason why this is interesting is that it took 1 hour and 15 minutes. This was her first tweet. She wasn't on Twitter before. She didn't have a Twitter account. It took 1 hour and 15 minutes since the first tweet went out to reaching her offline in Paris and her having then this impetus to get on the platform and share her voice. So the velocity with which that conversation traveled and went offline was incredible. And just to see how that then happens online, this is, for instance, one tweet that had 32,000 retweets, which amassed then 2.1 million impressions on Twitter, being seen by so many people, and then online, a further 21 million web impressions. So that shows, again, like how these things travel. Now, the reason I wanted to show that was it's part of the thinking about Twitter and the way that news cascades and into other networks. So Jonah Peretti from BuzzFeed said that they've been looking at their data quite closely and seeing that often these Twitter cascades, the news that starts on Twitter, tends to travel a lot further and faster and bleed into other networks more than any other platform. And so, excuse me for jumping from Je suis Charlie to something much more trivial and banal. But again, this really shows Twitter is the catalyst for the conversation around the dress. Now, quite clearly, we're all very clever people in this room, so it's obvious that it's white and gold. But it took here 3 hours only to go from the first tweet to being in the Today Show and being all around the world in terms of the media. Now, the way BuzzFeed looks at this is to say they got 1 million views on that article, and that those views came from a single tweet. So if you look at it in terms of just looking at the traffic, yes, Facebook actually delivered the most traffic to that one article. And because it was a very female-centric topic, actually Pinterest was also a heavy traffic driver. But the way BuzzFeed looks at this and attributes the traffic to Twitter being that catalyst, and they see this time and time again, put it on Twitter, and that's what then drives conversation in other platforms and around the web. So I think, reflecting again over the last 10 years and in the present time and where we're going, Twitter has really changed and is changing, continues to change, the way that news is consumed, produced, and distributed. We, of course, in that time amassed a huge audience. And I think there's something really interesting that is often missed about this. People often just talk about 320 million logged in users. But in fact, there's 500 million people that come every month. Some come daily, some come many times a week. They come to, and they consume content on profiles, they consume content on tweet embeds and go further. These are 500, so in total, 820 million people coming to Twitter. Of course, on top of that, we reach a lot more people embedded in news sites, on air, offline, etc. But if you view, sometimes looking at just the logged in, why? If you think about YouTube, how many people actually log into YouTube when you go to watch a video? If you go and read to a news site, and you read Bild, you read the Washington Post, how many people actually log in before reading that article? So if you look at it from that perspective, it's a very different reach, and 820 million is a huge number. In Germany, we actually just released for the first time a couple of days ago our figure that 12 million people come each month to Twitter in Germany. So in this time, obviously the world has gone mobile, and we take it out of our pocket 110 times a day on average, and 80% of people use Twitter on a mobile. And what we've seen over that time, particularly with regard to Twitter and TV, is Twitter really becoming the first screen. And this is something I love to show because I think it really hits home what I'm talking about. This is a study we did with ThinkBox in the UK, monitoring the use of devices while watching TV and seeing this idea of the first screen versus second screen. So if you look here and you think, what is the first screen and what is the second screen? Right, so there's a couple of takeaways I take from this. A, the English are not the best looking. B, that's pretty hard. I don't know if anyone is for TV being clearly the first screen there. It's maybe even debatable that actually mobile devices were the first screen. And Twitter is obviously first for news. And these are figures from the American Press Institute from last year. 86% of people use Twitter for news, and 74% do so daily. So that is really a strength of our platform. It's not the only thing people use Twitter for, quite clearly, but it's obviously a huge usage. Now, one of the interesting things we've also been seeing in terms of live news is that during these live moments, whether it's a TV debate, whether it's a breaking news situation, whether it's something that's happening in the world or on TV, time is being shifted in terms of minutes spent on mobile to Twitter. So you'll see a decrease, and this example is from the Republican debate. You'll see a decrease in traditional media, you'll see an incremental increase in some social, and you'll see a big bump on Twitter, because that's where people go to discuss live about what is happening. So I think Twitter has become, and is today, it's never been more essential to the journalist life cycle, to the journalist news cycle, and to that of a newsroom. And what we're doing is creating tools and developing those tools further for usage, particularly in newsrooms, but in broadcast and online, and beyond that, to create a more engaging experience, to create a platform where you can publish, you can create the news, and you can engage with your audience. And of course, to monetize. Video is something that we're extremely focused on. Of course, we're seeing a massive increase, and I'll talk about that in a second. I think here, obviously, the big thing that we're also excited about is to roll out monetization. So we've started with that in the US, and allowing publishers to then decide when they upload video to Twitter that they have a revenue share with Twitter. And have an advertiser marketplace that they enable other advertisers to put ads in front of their content on Twitter. So that's obviously something that we want to expand across the world. There's tools that we've invested in, such as Snappy TV, which is a fantastic tool for every broadcast, anyone that has a live stream that then wants to cut that in real time. The way it works, literally, as your stream is running, you feed it into Snappy TV, and you take a clip, you can take a 20, 30-second clip, decide what it is, hit go, and within, it will take you maximum maybe 20 seconds from the real-time broadcast to sending it out as a tweet and on other social platforms. And we're doing other things, these are some of the features that we are developing around video that, for instance, you can scroll back and forth, and it just becomes a lot more engaging on the platform. These are just some of the features we've rolled out in the last 12 months, and the cadence of our execution on developing the platform has really increased, and I'm super excited about what is on the roadmap for this year. So looking forward then, the present and what is happening in the future. We have 5 key priorities for us as a platform this year. I think on the one hand, it's really about refining what is already an iconic product. Everyone knows Twitter. Everyone knows the bird. Of those people that come to Twitter, do we make it easy enough for them to understand Twitter, for them to get a timeline that they can, that matches their interests? When they come today to see what is happening in breaking news, can they find that easy enough? Not right now. That is something where we need to do a better job in surfacing, for instance, the content that journalists and newsrooms produce to these new users. How do we refine the tweet? How do we make a tweet better? How do we refine the timeline? And we've already done some steps in that direction, which have increased a lot of engagement on the platform. Live video, of course, I'll talk about in a second. That's a huge priority for us. Safety, again, that's something we take extremely seriously. How do we make Twitter the safest platform out there? Investing in creators, investing in publishers, investing in the people that bring audience to Twitter, that produced a disproportionate amount of the great tweets we see on the platform. And then also developers. So really investing in this relationship with developers, with the people that are building on our API and getting value out of Twitter. We want to increase that relationship. So we've talked about, live really is a focus this year for Twitter. Twitter is a live platform, live conversations, but also live video. And as I said, video being a priority and the two together, live video really is something that we're betting on big this year. We are the fastest growing video platform across the 3 major platforms we have, obviously Twitter video, Periscope, and also Vine. There's 150x growth in video views on Twitter over the last 12 months. There's 40 years of Periscope consumed every day. The curve looks like that. It's blowing up at the moment in Sweden, in France, in Russia. It's being top of the #1 in the App Store for about 3 months. It's still top 10. There's many countries where Periscope is just getting started, really. It's actually hitting its first birthday this week, I believe, and it's a fascinating prospect. Vine, 1.5 billion loops of Vine videos every single day. So again, a really successful platform for videos in particularly the younger audience, very creative videos. This is also something that I know particularly those of you from UK, where we've launched it in the US, we've launched in Brazil and Australia. And this is, with Moments, we're trying to show the best of Twitter. As I said to those new users, the people that don't use Twitter that often, when they come to the platform, we want to give them a better experience. We want to show them the tweets that you are creating and surface them in the product. Today, this was up very quickly after the attacks. Just taking some of, the Sky News was in there was NBC, taking their tweets and surfacing them to our users. We've launched, as I said, in a number of countries. These are some of the partners we've launched with. And we're trying to develop this now. And we want to roll this out further. What we're doing is we're giving these publishers the tools, Moment Maker, to create these moments, to embed them on their own website. And what we've now, for instance, for a few weeks ago, we've introduced links in Moments to try and drive more traffic back to the publishers. So we're really looking here at the ROI for publishers and seeing how can we drive more traffic back as a platform. And I think this is a great way. So to finish up live streaming, so many of these pictures, if we think back in Gezi Park, Taksim Square, and Maidan, and all these moments where you've seen photos first from Twitter, you've seen some video, you've seen tweets. This is all going to be live streamed in the future. And that, I think, is a fascinating it's a challenge as well for newsrooms. It's a challenge to figure out how do you work with that? How do you integrate it into the story? How do you monitor all these different live streams? If you have from each kind of street, you're going to have someone live streaming that. And that's something we've already started to see. Unfortunately here, Paris attacks. On the left, the map, the blue were the replays, and red is live right now. That was just a screenshot of a tweet taken at the time. And Bild and Welt, for instance, to German publications that were reporting live from Paris, 170,000 views, 130,000 views at the time. And this is just really kind of starting to take off. There are many people also that have really started to discover Periscope as a tool for real-time reporting. One of them built Paul Ronsheimer, who's doing a fantastic job reporting from the refugee crisis, among others. And he followed, for instance, refugees for 12 days from Syria to Germany. There's an excerpt I just want to show you where he's on a boat from Turkey to Greece with refugees. And it just shows you what I think, what Paul said, that Periscope really allows people to become part of the story. When they're live with you, they can actually see that what is happening is true. There's been a lot of talk about the Lügenpresse in Germany. This actually shows you raw, we are live, this is happening right now, see for yourself. And I think that this is an incredible tool for journalists. Paul wasn't a video journalist before. And I think what I find very interesting is this idea about creating also empathy through live streaming. So I'll just play a short clip.
No, we're not close to Greece. We are still somewhere in Turkey because he was driving in circles. So it was just horrible. And see, he is trying to find
So he's pulling off. They don't know where to go.
Yeah, they call the Coast Guard.
So it's quite incredible being on that boat with Paul as he's telling that story, people reacting in real time as that happens. It's incredibly powerful, and it's really, I think, it's never been a better time really to be a journalist. It really hasn't. The way you can tell your story in so many facets and in so many ways, and you can tell it as it's happening, it's really a fascinating challenge and a fascinating opportunity. So just to finish up on Periscope, there's 3 areas that we're really looking at. One is discovery. So Periscope is the only platform really when you can discover what's happening in the world. Now we've started with this, the map. You can zoom into any city. You can go into Belgium and see right now who is streaming live from Brussels. But of course, we want to take that to the next level. How do we make discovery much easier on Periscope and investing there? Because like Twitter, it's an open platform, and therefore that is really going to be the power of Periscope. Creative, we recently integrated with GoPro, and so that opens up a whole ton of possibilities, particularly for people like this guy who obviously has perhaps a death wish. Do not try this on your next skiing holiday. So GoPro, obviously, how do we invest in more creative ways with Periscope? And finally, on the experience itself, I think obviously we've got a ton of work to do. I think one of the main things is making Periscopes last longer than 24 hours. Right now, after 24 hours, they're gone. That's something we want to change. Another big addition is to integrate on news sites, to make Periscopes embeddable on news sites so that you can get your journalists to live stream through your articles. So I think there's going to be a ton coming from Periscope. This is really just the beginning. We've integrated it heavily now into Twitter, and we're going to be doing more things there. But now, when you Periscope, it's played in the timeline in Twitter, and so I think there's a lot of fascinating stuff to come there. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you, and particularly thank you for the bravery of taking the last slot in the day. I do appreciate we're all ready to run and get planes, trains, and automobiles. But if we have a question, let's see a raised hand, and we'll just see if we can. You could be the lucky person that asked the very last question of DIS 2016, and it's you, sir. Congratulations. And if we're even luckier, you'll get a microphone. No, it's we'll get a microphone to you, otherwise no one else will hear what you're saying. So name an organization, please.
Josh Rucci, Bloomberg. Great presentation. Thank you. Fascinating what you said about Periscope and trying to expand it beyond the 24 hours, especially given Snapchat's rise. Can you just go into the decision-making behind extending it past 24, given how Snapchat's made a big shout about having everything disappear after 24 hours?
Look, I think there's, I can't comment on Snapchat, but certainly there's a lot of value in making these things last longer. At the end of the day, if we're getting journalists are creating great content, we want to integrate that in an article. But if that then disappears after 24 hours and you can't see it in some shape or form, it's not great for the journalists or for the newsroom. So I think there was definitely a philosophical thinking behind the 24 hours at the beginning, but that is definitely something I think needs to be taken away.
Okay. And I think that was the last one, so can I ask you please to thank Rowan? Thank you.
Thank you.